Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fiction or genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Outsider. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we continue with Holly's investigation as she's kind of taking some of the stuff she picked up last episode and is trying to kind of piece it together to figure out, okay, so like what exactly went down, because obviously we learned about the dude last episode who killed himself, who seems to be in a similar circumstances as Terry. His name is Heath. Well, we got that opening where it's him with a woman, and I'm like, okay, what's this going to be? And I like that because it's so out of context, but then later on it kind of throws you and swerves you around to be like, now this is what that was supposed to represent, because you kind of get the full picture of everything. But obviously it takes a lot of stuff that I thought last episode and elaborates on it and kind of confirms a lot of stuff that I thought, because obviously, you know, last episode I kind of theorized that, like, okay, so obviously it's setting up to be like Terry wasn't the first, there's been others. It seems like there's been Heath, and then we end up finding out even before Heath there was someone else named Maria. And so who knows how long that this whole situation has been going on. Well, first and foremost with Heath's situation, basically, because obviously Holly followed the lady who worked at that place that I forgot what the actual place, the place that Terry's dad is at. Like, she works there. She was working at the front desk, and I love that Holly's just kind of following her and then gets pepper sprayed. And I'm like, because I mean, I guess it's because the way Holly's mind is. She even says it later on. She kind of skips a step. Like, probably there would have been a better approach to that rather than just following her back to her place. You wouldn't have gotten pepper sprayed, but still. But now it turns to, you know, obviously, you know, Holly talks to her about Heath, and it's like the fact that she knew him for like 5 years and there's no way he could have done it. But then, you know, Holly brings up the fact is there are plenty of cases where serial killers kind of live a double life, people never knowing, and people bring up that stuff of like, there's no way he could have done it, I never would have guessed, I never knew that side exists. But obviously the situation is a little different, because obviously Heath's situation is very similar to once again Terry's, where it's like he has both. All the evidence literally points that he did it, but at the same time there's a whole bunch of other evidence showing like he wasn't there, because it even turns out he was with his mom the entire time. His mom even was saying like he never left my side this entire situation, but then like obviously to everyone on the outside it's like, well, that's a lie if he was popping up here. So it obviously, a lot of the evidence, obviously much like Terry's situation, contradicted itself. And so what's really interesting about whatever this thing is, we'll get to it later on, but the fact is when it impersonates people, it slides into who they are, but it doesn't adopt their personality, because the lady was like, normally it's basically a chatterbox. He likes to talk, but it's just like he kind of gives her a nod and a smile like it was like, oh, to like someone you didn't really know. So then we kind of get the Terry explanation of like the slip and slide in the hallway and the scratching happened, because obviously when we kind of look back on it, we see Terry kind of look down his arm. So it's like in that moment it happened. So, and it would seem like that whole thing went down after the fact of like the girls' bodies had just popped up, and Heath ended up, or might not have even popped up, but the murders had already happened, and Heath went back to work afterwards, which obviously didn't make any sense. But once again, it's like the Terry situation of almost seeming like you want to get caught, you know? And obviously Holly brings all this information up to Ralph, and Ralph kind of looks at some video footage, and then he starts noticing something. Like, obviously, like, he's running through all the footage, because Eunice is kind of like, dude, you're kind of not in the case, this would be a problem. But it's like, no, Ralph is looking for something. And at the strip club, he sees that at one point he's like, whoa, slow that down. Does that look like he's scratching him? So it looks like Terry, or rather, quote unquote, Terry scratches the dude who runs the place. So it's like, because even later on, Ralph asked him about it. It's like, oh, did you notice anything? And it's like, he doesn't say anything. Ralph is just like, okay. So I'm like, okay, so that must mean at this point in time, he's already been switched out. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Because even just his personality and stuff like that, that's why almost like he was trying to, it's like, yeah, almost like, Ralph, you can get out my business type of thing, where he's like, I'm not trying to jam you up or anything, I just had some extra questions. But part of me wondering, has he already been replaced? Is it trying to fit the mood of like, okay, this is how a home dude would act, so I gotta act like that? Because like I said, it's not like this thing is a perfect mimic. Whatever thing is that it does, it can wear your skin, it can disguise itself as you, but it doesn't know all there is to the ins and outs of your life. But I guess it studies you enough to kind of mimic you enough to kind of get by on a daily basis to anyone in a general, not those who are necessarily close to you that would notice, but regardless. And so that's where that kind of comes up. Because what's also really interesting is like, because it begs the question, because I kept wondering, it's like, okay, so is Jack going to get replaced? But he's got that thing in the back of his neck. And so his situation is different from everyone else's because it's like a scratch. So I mean, like, oh, I'm going to replace you. I'm going to commit some murders and you're going to get blamed for it. But Jack's situation is different. Like, it looks like he's just kind of spacing out. He's not even there because Tamika's like, oh, like, are you going to miss my baby shower? You're just sitting there. Like, what's up? And then later on, we see him buying all those supplies. There's that deer he had killed, but he dragged it away. Because it went back to, because it's similar to that, what was that boar or earlier in the season that he had hunted. And it seemed like he went straight to packing up his stuff and leaving. But then you cut back to the body and it looks like it's been eaten or ripped apart. The deer is like that too. And there's a whole bunch of stuff out there, like a lamp, some gasoline. Like, it looks like a little nest is being made. So I'm thinking Jack is being controlled. Like, this thing doesn't only impersonate people, it can kind of whisper into people's ear to kind of get them to do stuff for him as well. And it seems like maybe it's not 100% control because it seems like Jack could kind of snap out of it, but not fully, to the point he will subconsciously do stuff without really realizing it. But remember at the end of last episode, he's like, I'll do whatever you want. I'll do whatever you want. Because I guess it kind of breaks down your psyche enough that you kind of become, its unwilling partner. So that's what I'm thinking Jack is. Like, I don't think Jack is like being replaced by this thing or whatever. I think it's purely like, no, he's unknowingly serving this thing and kind of, because I think that's what that was, like, out, like that boar and that deer, that was it eating, and he doesn't realize that's what he's doing. Like I said, he's doing it all subconsciously. I'm like, why go through the trouble killing the deer? You're just going to drag it away like that. I didn't understand, because that's that thing out there eating, like, without drawing too much attention to itself. So whatever this thing is, obviously it's smart because it knows how to fake enough evidence, put everything right to make sure it gets, people caught in whatever situation, but it kind of hides itself away enough that it never gets caught up in all of this. Because I guess if it kind of just went out snacking whenever it wanted to without putting on a new skin and committing murders and stuff like that, then it'd get caught. But it's an interesting thing. Like I said, we'll kind of circle it all together. But Holly ends up learning, like, obviously Heath, like, went to New York a little while back, and he didn't really talk too much about the trip to his coworker. But then there was a situation of Holly looking into that and looking at murders that might have taken place in New York. And so she looks and finds out there's this woman named Maria who was, arrested for killing a little boy. And Holly goes and visits her. And it's interesting because at first Holly, it's interesting because for her, it's like, I didn't do this and no one really believes me. It's kind of a very similar situation, obviously. But now it adds in, but then like Holly was like, yeah, it's not just you. There's been another case like this with Heath. And the fact of the matter is, and she's like, I've never actually met him. But then again, she thinks like, well, actually, there was some dude that kind of looked like this. I did meet. But then he was asking me for breakfast. And I was like, sure. But the next day I changed my mind. Hard cut to the opening we got where it's like, so at that moment, dinner, that wasn't her. That was the thing pretending to be her. And it seems like it scratched Heath during sex. So it's like, which I think is interesting. Because, I mean, for what purpose did it do that? I'm wondering. I mean, I feel like you could have scratched him at any other point in time, like you literally did with everyone else. But why that? Like, did you want to get your rocks off at the same? Like, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting that you went through all that trouble to be able to scratch him. But why through that? Because you never went through that heavy of a process, at least that we're aware of, with anyone else. So, but I guess maybe it's supposed to. I mean, the thing, it makes it seem like it's accident. It's like with the whole Heath to Terry situation, it slipped and slide. It also makes you wonder why it picks the particular victims that it picks. Like, why Maria? Why Heath? Why Terry? Is it because it would cause the most ramifications, the most chaos, the bigger like tidal waves of just like domino effects of things? Is that what that does? And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I'm wondering, does this thing like stalk and pick out particular prey in the grand scheme of things? But obviously, like, Maria's kind of thinking like, I'm here. If I'm here for a reason. It's got to be in God's will, and I don't know. It's not my will to question that. But then what she brings up something interesting. It's like, Holly's like, wait, you know who did this to you, didn't it? And she's like, I'm not going to say, because if I do, if anyone else hears me say this, I'm going to go to the loony bin. So it's like, she knows there's something up, and the lady nearby is listening. And she has a whole conversation with Holly that I think is really interesting. She brings up something that, because basically she's saying like every, different people, because she's like, do you believe in the devil? Do you believe in just one devil? And Holly was like, no, I believe in multiple devils. And obviously like everyone's got their own version of the boogeyman, because she calls hers like El Coco. Obviously one she said was like, she heard from a Russian lady refer to it as the Baba Yaga, which I've heard that from time to time. I'm not in the full scope of what the Baba Yaga, I'm not fully aware of its, the lore behind it, but it's a name I've heard from time to time. But basically, best way to kind of use it is the boogeyman. Essentially, what she's suggesting is that this thing kills children. That's its main meal. It stuffs itself on meals, and then it kind of does what I was bringing up before. It causes ramifications, and it feeds off the suffering and misery, not only of the victim, of the child they killed, not just their family, but also the families of the people that of the person that disguised itself as. Using Heath, for example, when it came to Heath, his mom killed herself because she was so distraught about this. His brother OD'd. But then on the other side, the victim, the two little girls, their grandfather had a stroke like around that time, and their mother like nearly killed herself. And very similar to everything with the Terry situation, because what happened to Frankie's family, first his mom died, then his brother died because he killed Terry, but Ralph killed him, and then the dad tried to kill himself, but still is in the situation he's in. And it's something like I thought, like it's like it feeds off of like all that, because I thought like maybe it causes it. I mean, which it still could be a possibility that it kind of floods like those general people with this misery where they feel like, oh, they have to push themselves. So it might not even be that. That was my thought initially, that maybe it causes those things by like kind of, but it doesn't seem like it causes it. It's just nearby to feed off the grief, because it knows it's going to push people over the edge. So now, because in its own way, this also answers a question I had before, which now in retrospect is like, I should have figured as much. I was like, why is it spending so much time around Glory and her kids? I was trying to figure that out. Why are you talking to Glory's kid? Because you're trying to get them sad. You want them desperate. I mean, once again, it's potentially whispering in Jack's ear. Who's to say it's not whispering in every person that does something, whether it's Heath's brother that OD'd, or his mom speeding in the car and ramming into a pole with, telephone pole or whatever to die. Like, who's to say this thing isn't just whispering in their ears, kind of playing on their grief, kind of amplifying it, so maybe it's a combination of what I thought plus what they kind of revealed. But now it makes sense. Like I said, it's trying to mess with them. And so now I'm thinking like, okay, so what this could potentially mean, and this could be the setup, is that basically it might plan on making Glory kill her children and herself. That's my immediate thought, because it wants the most casualty. Because Terry's, like, obviously, like I said, we've seen with Frankie's family, but Terry's family, they're dealing with a lot, but that's all. But they haven't gone down that route yet. Like, they haven't kind of gone through some suffering. Like, there hasn't been suffering and despair to that level of just kind of death affecting Terry's family in particular. And it's only a moment, because you look at like what Glory went through this episode. There's a lady pretending to be like it's like I studied language and math and blah blah blah, and she's like, all right, solve this, because she was like, certain things in your little resume and stuff not making sense, so I solved this problem. It's like, what are you, a reporter or something? It's like, get the hell out, because people are pretending just so they can get close to the family, so they can ask. It's like, no, let me tell your story. She goes out to dinner with her lawyer and his wife, and the nearby dude starts some shit. People are looking at her, can't even enjoy a meal. Obviously, dude starts some crap, and obviously Ralph, it's like, yo, you even look at her, I'll gotta tear you apart, so get the hell out of here. So once again, it probably plays into the thing of like, it doesn't even need to like really kind of push things. It just kind of sit back and relax You know, so that's why, like I said, I'm curious. Like, does it influence things, or is it just kind of like arms behind its head, relaxing, and just let the chaos ensue on its own, just because of human nature, or does it kind of flood it, like I said, not only feed off that fear, because even the lady was like, if the children are the main course, the pain and suffering of the families are dessert. You know, so that adds this whole interesting element to it. And obviously, one of the pictures she looks up is of the Coco, and she looks at different versions of it, like but the one she shows is like a picture of, it looked like a mom with two children, which is like very reminiscent of Glory. So it seems like Glory might be the next target, but once again, it's like, has this thing already chosen a new form, like it did the dude from the strip club? Like, if it scratches you, it seems like it's already kind of, well, we know it doesn't look like Terry anymore because it already shed both the skin and the clothes, because that substance they found, I'm assuming that's from it shedding the skin, like the reference I made was kind of like a skinwalker from Supernatural. So that's all interesting. There's even that kid who stole the van and he parked it. He kept being like, he kept dodging everything, so he was kind of like, oh, he didn't remember the parking lot and stuff like that, until he was like, honestly, I felt bad about lying about it, but I did remember because I saw the dude and he saw me see him. And obviously he draws him and shows the disfigured face. So I'm like, so yes. And I'm wondering, you see that look on Ralph's face? It makes me wonder, did Ralph kind of remember seeing him? Because obviously he's popped up here and there throughout some of the crime scenes and stuff like that, been in the background. But I don't know. But all of this is probably why, much like that little kid being afraid to say what he saw, because he probably thought, like, no one would probably believe me when I saw. I think that's probably why because Maria is religious, plus she probably grew up like that lady, hearing the different stories of, like, El Coco, so it's probably like, she was like, if I tell people the truth, people are going to think I'm crazy. Obviously, Holly has a much more open mind than most people. Obviously, you tell this to Ralph is most likely to shut you down, but she's willing to kind of hear things through because she is open-minded. She has, religion and everything, but she believes in both God and the devil, and obviously multiple devils. So I just think that's kind of an interesting element. I also thought was another interesting element was the whole situation with her and the security guard dude that she met the other, like, last episode. I thought that was interesting that, like, oh, he's asking her out on a date and everything, and even him being like, oh, you want to finish off this nightcap? And she's like, no, I got work to do. And then they kiss, and he's just kind of left dumbfounded when he's just in there like, oh, whoa, kind of looks. So I was like, that's interesting. But I guess it's also kind of a further expansion of kind of seeing who she is, just when it comes to, like, relationships and just her personal life, like that her the elements of just kind of who she is, like, you see it trickle out, and like I said, just her personal life as well. I think that's what that's supposed to, potentially represent, but, we'll see. Well, I also think it's kind of interesting that it should be pulled away from this situation is, like, all of this, as well as, like, Maria's, like, the only one that's kind of been, that this Coco has, like, pretended to be and is still alive, because Heath ended up killing himself, Terry ended up getting killed, so I don't know, like, I mean, there's always a possibility, but for her, it's like, because everyone else, kind of pushed Heath because he knew people were getting on him like they got on Terry about being a child killer and stuff like that. But for her, she's like, I've already suffered enough that I never had to worry about that. It's actually really sad in the long run, because obviously with this whole situation, you can tell, like, it doesn't even have to be a situation of Glory and her, like, might snap and end up killing her and her daughters. It doesn't even have to be something like that, because, look at the situation with Maria's dad and uncle. The grandfather of the kid she, quote-unquote, killed ended up killing them, and she was like, I'm innocent just like they were, but it's the thing is, like, because people can't get the revenge they want, they ended up going after the people closest to her. So once again, it's just this whole situation just perpetuates that suffering and that despair, that this thing is devouring and just kind of gorging itself on. So I am very, very interested to see ultimately where this all ends up taking us going forward. Because, like I said, I'm curious because obviously Ralph kind of shows the picture, but it's like, are they going to think, like, they'll probably be realistic, be like, okay, so maybe he's a dude with a burned face or something like that. I I'm curious, are they going to try to justify it by being like, this isn't as what, you know, are they going to believe the kid, or just going to be like, oh, maybe it's just part of his own imagination or something like that? He did tell us the truth before, now he's just trying to string us along. Is that what they're going to think? I don't know. I'm curious to see, like I said, where it takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.